In this video, we'll explore how to add and link new tasks. But before we can start adding new tasks, we need to define when the project start date is so that when we add new tasks, they start as soon as possible, while that soon as possible is the project start date. Alternately, we can also define when the project end date is and then work backwards. Whether forwards planning or backwards planning, you may also have some certain milestones that you may need to hit, like taking down a crane before hurricane season, or completing earthwork before wintertime when the ground freezes over and is hard to work with. Another thing to think about before adding tasks is whether you want to manually determine start and finish dates for each task you add, or if you want your project management tool, Synchro in this case, to do that work for you. Before we begin adding tasks, let's make sure we have our project set up properly. Let's go to the navigator over here on the left and then make sure we have project selected. I'm going to bring this down a little bit so we can see more of the project panel. And in the very beginning we see project start, project finish, duration, and number of tasks. These are grayed out for a reason, so I can't modify them. The reason for that is this just tells us details about our project. So project start here really means the very beginning of the very first task in our project. And then project finish alternately would be the finish date of the very last task of our project. Then project duration figures out the time between start and finish, and the number of tasks. So this is really just details about our project. Project date 0, this is when your project actually starts, regardless when your earliest task begins. You can set this manually, and it is used really for reports and animations to display week numbers. So let's go down to data date. Now data date is kind of your point of view. Setting it to automatic will use today's date, and every day this data date will move. So when we use it tomorrow, it will be a different date, and so on and so forth. I usually keep this to automatic, but you can set it to manual if you need to. Now under schedule, we have ASAP and ALAP. These are as soon as possible and as late as possible, respectively. If you are backwards planning, meaning you know when your finish date is, and you're working backwards, then you'll want to use ALAP. Otherwise, ASAP is the default, and this is probably the most common. If we move down a little bit further, we'll see schedule from and schedule to. We'll get into these a little bit later in this chapter. And we also have cost. Now these, just like the very top where we have project start, project finish, these are grayed out, and these really just give us statistics about our project. So now that we have our project set up the way we want, let's tweak one final setting, that is rescheduling. To turn auto rescheduling on or off, let's go to Tools, and then Options, and then here on the Gantt chart, let's go down to Rescheduling. Now, let's check both of them, Enable Automatic Rescheduling and Confirm Rescheduling Results. What this does is if you change any task, duration, start date, or finish date, and other tasks are affected by any changes you make, you'll get a little pop-up kind of warning dialog box warning you that other tasks will change, and it will highlight which task will change and how they will change. So this is a nice setting that I like to keep, and I really suggest that everybody uses it. So let's begin entering our tasks. Now in any row, I'll just use the top one here. Let's select within the name column, and now in that cell, let's start adding our task name. I'm just going to call this one task 1. I'm going to hit enter. Now automatically Synchro assigns it an ID number, which we see begins with STO, and it gives a duration and the start date. Now I'm in the next row in the name, and I can actually add a new task just by typing. So task 2, and I'll hit enter again. Now what we can do, if I want to add multiple tasks, I'm going to select this cell again, and we see there's a little dot at the bottom right hand corner of this cell, and just like in Microsoft Excel, we can grab this and drag it down and add as many tasks as we want. As you can see, it continued the sequence, so we had 1, 2, and it continued down 3 all the way down to 22. And this is a nice feature if you have any tasks that are sequential in numbering. From here we can modify durations, so I'll take task 1 and I'll click in the duration box, and I'm just going to hit the number 2 and we hit enter. Here for task 2, I'm going to hit 2 again, and notice how there's D automatically filled in. We can actually replace that with a W and hit enter, and that gives us 2 weeks. Now if we want to make task 3 a milestone meaning it doesn't really take any work, it's just really just a placeholder for a certain date, and I'll show you what it looks like. Let me just close these columns up a little bit more so we can expose our Gantt chart. And I'll close the resource properties box. Actually, I'll just unpin it. Then I'll drag this over a little bit. And I'll zoom in so we can see a little bit more in details. So task 1 is 2 days, and task 2 is 2 weeks, and the rest of the tasks are 1 day. Now, we can change task 3 to a milestone task. Now, really, all we gotta do is select the duration, and hit 0, and hit enter. And you can see it changed from a little bar to a diamond in the Gantt chart. And that really changes our task from a regular work task to just a milestone. Now, lastly, we're going to go over how to link tasks as a chain. So we have task 1, and we want task 2 to begin immediately after task 1 ends. So what I'm going to do is select task 1, then I'll hit my control key, and while holding down the control button, I'm going to select task 2. Now that I have those two selected, I'm going to go into edit, go down to link tasks, and link as chain. So we get that little pop-up like we confirmed in our options, and it just tells us that one task will automatically be rescheduled. Now, I like to hit yes, and I never really check this just so I always get that warning when a task is going to be moved. So I'll hit yes, and now task 2 begins after task 1 ends. Now, we can do this actually with multiple tasks at a time. So I'm going to hit task 4 here, and I'm going to hold down my control key again and go 5, 6, 7. Now I can go back to edit and go down to link tasks and link as chain, or as you can see we have a keyboard shortcut for control L, or if you don't like that, there's also an option in the toolbar up here, so link as chain, and I'm going to hit on that, and again it gives me that, shows me how my tasks are going to move, and you can kind of see the outline of where these tasks are going to go. So let's hit yes, and they move accordingly. I'll show you one more example. 8, and now instead of hitting the control button and hitting each task individually, I'm just going to hold down the shift key and click down on task 12. Now that selected those tasks in order, and I'm going to, again, link as chain, hit yes, and we can see that those tasks have been linked. What happens when we don't have the order? Let's say task 8 doesn't begin before task 9. In fact, task 8 begins when task 9 is done. So I'm going to actually hit Control Z to undo. So what I'm going to do is select my tasks in the order that they begin. So in chronological order. So let's say task 10 is first, and then task 9, and then task 13, and then task 8 starts, and then 11 and 12. So you saw the order that I selected them in, and what I'm going to do now is link as chain. And you can see that the tasks are linked and have that relationship according to how I selected the tasks. In the next video, we're going to explore WBS and parent-child relationships.